this is extremely interesting. Jeff, is Dan Campbell the next Jim Schwartz? And what does that mean? Is that record-wise, coaching-wise? What factors can we take into consideration when we look at these two coaches? And here's the first similarity I can draw with the two. Jim Schwartz took over an abysmal roster.
Right.
Dan Campbell took over an abysmal roster. Okay. Jim Schwartz took over an 0-16 team and drafted a franchise quarterback. Here's where we deviate a little bit. Dan Campbell took over a horrible roster with no franchise quarterback and is trying to figure out how to win football games.
Right.
That's a bit of a conundrum. See, Schwartz walked in with a rookie quarterback, so he had 3 years to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
Dan Campbell is sitting here without the quarterback of the future, and you're kind of unclear. Is he going to take the route where they go from 0-16, now Jim Schwartz is hired, they go 2-14, 6-10, they've shown improvement, and then they go 10-6, they make a run at the wild card.
But what happened after that?
Oh, they went 4-12, but then they finished 7-9 with a really good roster. They really underachieved, and then we all know what happened. Jim Caldwell walked in with that same roster and went 11-5 with it.
Yep.
Having said that, Jeff, is he the next Jim Schwartz for this franchise?
I can see the win progression, because 2-14 to 6-10 to 10-6. I feel like that's what we talk about all the time. This season, you're probably gonna get 2 wins. Okay, you're 2-14-1. You go into next season. What are they? How many games do you want to win? We say 6, 7, 8 games. Okay, the following year you're expecting, like they did. They lost to New Orleans in the NFC wild card game, but what happened after that is, I think, hopefully is the difference between, Dan Campbell or Jim Schwartz, because you talk about underachieving, 4-12, 7-9, then of course he was fired for Jim Caldwell. So I think that with Dan Campbell, I mean, I can see what you mean and what a lot of people see in the similarities. I think Schwartz has a little more ego. Campbell has that raw enthusiasm. If you watch him, different personalities a little bit. I think he has more common sense, self-control than Schwartz. Schwartz is a hothead. He's an old school, smash mouth, egotistical. Like that's who Jim Schwartz is. Campbell seems to have that, but he's also common, more self-control. I don't see Dan Campbell in the Jim Schwartz, because Dan Campbell's played. He was a tight end. I think players have a lot more respect for that. He's been there. He's doing the things they're doing. I think there might be a little more of a disconnect between Jim Schwartz. Maybe eventually his preaching gets old. I don't see that same thing happening with Dan, just because he can relate to these guys.
I'm not sure what the hell we're talking about in chat a little bit, because Samuel Lang says, no, Campbell is developing a roster. Schwartz's teams were relatively talented. That's not true. That's not true at all. Excuse me, he took over an 0-16 roster. Their first year with Matthew Stafford, they were talentless. They went 2-14. They drafted Ndamukong Suh. Then they drafted Nick Fairley. They built a roster under Jim Schwartz. And the roster they built is the roster that Jim Caldwell benefited from year one, may I remind you. What are you guys talking about? They had a good direction under Jim Schwartz. What, because he got pissed off at Jim Harbaugh? You're going to remember him as a hothead? He was actually a good coach. He's pretty decent. Did a good job. He recovered the team from its lowest point in its history when they went 0-16.
Yeah.
He brought it back. He brought them to a playoff berth within 3 years. And he built a really strong roster. And if Dan Campbell delivers the first 3 seasons that Jim Schwartz did, I would consider that pretty successful.
Right. Progression-wise, definitely.
Progression-wise, yep. And you got to the playoffs.
Definitely.
Now, if you win a game, hell yeah, I'm all on board. But thank you, Funky. All Schwartz had when he walked in was Calvin Johnson. What the hell else did he have? What the hell else did he have? Tell me. Nothing. No defensive line. No secondary players. No offensive line. No run game. No second and third wide receiver. They went out and built and got all of those players over the years to come. Like, it is unbelievable. We have revisionist history. Great, Samuel. I'm glad you had Megatron. Great. That's a team? You win because you have a wide receiver? I don't understand how making the comparison here is too far off. He's more classy than Dan Campbell has more class. Excuse me, than Jim Schwartz. Really?
Well,
What's your definition of class?
Maybe not class, but you think.
Well, he doesn't rage on the sidelines.
You think? Let me ask you this: you think from a player's perspective? Now we're outsiders looking in, but you think Jim Schwartz? You got Dan Campbell. Who you think Jim's message tends to get lost quicker? Maybe
Jim's
because
message is lost because he blows up extremely. He's a hothead, which is why he was never a great coach.
Right.
It's why he's such a good coordinator, right? You can get away with being yelling in your face all the time, blowing up in the locker room because you're a coordinator on defense. But to say that the comparison isn't there, I see it. But they're different people, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I see Dan Campbell more, I don't want to say reserved, but I would say more disciplined is maybe the word.
That's a good word.
Maybe that's the right word for Dan Campbell. He's more disciplined than Jim Schwartz.
Because he's got that
but they
fire.
both took on the same project. And if I'm looking at it, in 3 years, Jim Schwartz got you to the playoffs. I don't see why Dan Campbell can't get you to the playoffs. I really don't. And Jim did it with a third-year rookie quarterback who had barely played 30 games because he missed all of his first year, basically. So we choose to remember the good and bad things based on what fits with what we're saying. And for us to say, well, Jim Schwartz had a ton of bad late game decision making. Well, what the hell has Dan Campbell done? Look, whether you like it or not, I actually see the comp here. I can totally see it, and I hope to see it flourish the way it did under Jim Schwartz. I would love for this team to be a 10, 11 win team by year 3. I would love that. That would be progress. Mm-hmm. That would be a guy building a team and being able to coach them up and win football games. Great. One obstacle in the way. Nah, I don't believe in your quarterback. Who's your quarterback in 3 years? 2 years, let's say.
Yeah, you really don't know.
Is it still Jared Goff? And if it isn't, okay, who is it? Have you gone out and signed somebody, drafted somebody? So Dan Campbell, his situation is trickier, I would argue.
Definitely.
Than Jim Schwartz. Because Jim Schwartz, he came in with a franchise quarterback. You didn't know it at the time, but you expected it. He was the number 1 overall pick.
Number 1 wide receiver as well. You had Calvin there.
And then you drafted Ndamukong Suh fairly. You built a really good roster. And you had moments in time where the team looked phenomenal. But they had the quarterback. Dan Campbell doesn't. And how much can you actually evaluate him by year 3, by year 4, if he hasn't had the quarterback? And I'm sorry. I mean, we say this about everyone else in the NFL. You got to get the quarterback right. And do you think it's Jared Goff? Honestly. If it is, great. They'll live and die by it. I'm okay with it. My job is not on the line if Jared Goff is named the starting quarterback. It is not. Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes are. If they think they have their quarterback in Jared Goff, great. Cool. Go for it. Happy for you. You better win football games. That's who you're putting. That's the narrative and the message you're trying to send with what you have. I don't see it. Jerry, I get what you're saying, but I don't see it. Jerry Benson writes in and says, Campbell reminds me of Rod Marinelli, a positions coach who had no business being a head coach. If he hires his brother-in-law as a defensive coordinator, we'll know for sure. Look, I mean, Marinelli made some really bad mistakes, but he has shown much more promise than Rod Marinelli ever did. Guys, again, remember history as it was. Under Rod Marinelli, you wanted to gouge your eyes, and you hated being a Lions fan. Just admit it. Under Dan Campbell right now, you are optimistic to an extent, and you're looking forward to the future. A lot of that does bear in place because of Brad Holmes and the work he's done, but the point is, they are building a team, and I don't see Jared Goff as that franchise guy. Now, if you do, great. Your job is on the line for that, not mine. But I don't see it. Wasim, Jeff did win the championship. He didn't. And everything is falling apart. But back to where I want to settle here, and I really want to just finish this topic. I think Dan Campbell being Jim Schwartz is a damn good thing. I do. If you tell me in 3 years he built a contending roster that got to the playoffs, great. Job accomplished. Now take it to the next level. Don't go 4-12 the fourth year like Jim Schwartz did. Don't go 4-12 and 7-9 in your final 2 years. So Dan, if you go 2 wins this year, 6 wins next year, 10 wins the year after, and then you go 2 wins the following year, you're probably going to be out of a job. But if you can go to 10 wins and then elevate to 12 and win a division, or dare I say stay at 10 or 11 and compete for the division, you're going to have a job in this league. But that is so predicated on you getting the quarterback. And if you think it's Jared Goff, I have to say good luck. I have to.